Hey listeners, it's Jen. I can't believe we're into season 6 of What Are You Listening To? This week, I'm back with the season's first installment of What Are You Listening To Time Capsule. WAYLT Time Capsule is just that. It's bits and pieces in the form of songs that are meant to evoke a certain time or place. I'm going to bring you a 4-song playlist like always, but time capsule episodes are not interview style. They're simply meant to create a vibe or mark an audio moment in time. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. I'm not sure how, but it's already February. And once I recover from the holidays and get through the madness of January, I usually find myself feeling very reflective and nostalgic for the past. February is always a time to remember month for me. I always think about lessons I learned the year before that I don't want to repeat. And I think a lot about when I was young and learning some of life's hardest lessons for the first time. I often recall how big my feelings were then and how electric everything felt. So this week, I'm sharing some songs that help me grow up and move on. The playlist will feature 4 songs that remind me of where I've been and the valuable lessons learned that got me to today and keep me moving forward. Which songs made the cut? You're about to find out. And as you listen, if any of the songs are new to you, don't worry. We'll publish a playlist with the episode so you don't miss a beat. All right, let's get into it. We're going to start in the very early 90s when I was in my teens, and we'll hang out in that general time frame for the first 3 songs before we close out the playlist with a more recent song from 2021. But as I mentioned in the intro, so much happens and you learn so much in those, early high school to college years that I feel like that's a time frame I really had to focus on. So that's where we'll start this list. And that's where we'll start with our first song. The very first track on this week's time capsule is a song called See the Lights by Simple Minds. Now, Simple Minds is, of course, most famous for their huge 80s hit, Don't You Forget About Me from The Breakfast Club, which I love. We all love. I think that that's, again, a formative movie for a lot of us that grew up in the 80s. But to me, this is their big song. I love See the Lights. I think that this song really captures a time and place, and it's not associated with anything like a movie for me. Do you know what I mean? I feel like Don't You Forget About Me is so intrinsically linked with that film that you almost can't separate the two. And I think that I like See the Lights, and I included it on this playlist because it really is just about a time and place for me. It's not tied to the nostalgia of a movie or anything else in pop culture. It's just a song that I love. And the song reminds me of so much, a boy and breaking someone's heart unintentionally and the huge responsibility that you feel after that. Trying to reconcile what part of the heartbreak you have to own and what belongs to the other person, and the recovery time it takes to let your heart out into the wild and do it all over again, which we do. We have to move forward. But this song just takes all of that and puts it into one place for me. I think another thing that I love about this particular song is that it also gives me perspective. I think when I reflect on those relationships that taught me a lot, I often do it with rose-colored glasses. Things always seem prettier with the haze around them. And this song seems to have that haze. Do you know what I mean? It sounds like you get the bells in it, which feels kind of, I don't know, I picture myself sort of on like a cliffside, and I'm looking into the water and it's foggy and hazy and I can hear the bells. Like, I don't know. I think it just captures that, again, the rose colored glasses aspect of looking backwards at something that in the moment was like so painful or hurtful or again, taught you so much. But when you look back on it, it seems much prettier than it actually was or than it felt at the time. So I love that this song offers that. I think another thing, just to dial back for a second to Simple Minds, they are a Scottish rock band. They formed in Glasgow in 1977. So they're from the UK, but they're not English. I think a lot of people just associate them with being, from England, like so many bands from back in this time frame were, especially popular 80s bands, and that were tied to, movies or that genre of music. But they are actually Scottish. And I think that, again, maybe that serves as some of the backdrop for a little bit of the melancholy that you get, especially in this song as well. I also love Jim Kerr's voice. He's the lead singer. If you're not familiar with Simple Minds, or you've really only heard Don't You Forget About Me or maybe Belfast Child, they are really a great band to just like go back and revisit. They have a greatest hits album called Glittering Prize that I think is just spectacular. It has a lot of their big hits on it, but also some of their, B-sides and lesser known tracks. So that's a good place to start. Definitely, if you need an easy place to jump into Simple Minds, I would recommend starting with Glittering Prize. I think in large part, again, because of Jim Kerr's pleading vocals, this song really does such a good job of capturing that feeling of wanting to stay in like a safe, familiar place with a person, even though it's not the place you need to be. It's hard to walk away from that comfort and routine. At least it is for me. Maybe not everyone. But I think that this is a super underrated song in general by a super underrated band. I think that Simple Minds are great. And in my opinion, this is one of their best songs. So take this as an open invitation to dig into Simple Minds, listeners. Well, as promised, for track 2, we're staying in the same general time frame. So let's continue the journey. Next up is a song called Waiting Room by Fugazi. So we took it down a notch with Simple Minds, and now we're going to turn it up a little bit with Fugazi. This song came out in 1989, but it didn't really find me until 3 years later in 1992. I had moved to Denton to attend the University of North Texas. The time that I spent in Denton backdropped so much of the most formative years of my life. I think that's the best way to phrase it. I met people that I'm still friends with. I learned some of life's hardest lessons. I worked hard. I played hard. I figured out who I wanted to be when I grew up. I think that I just have so much love and nostalgia for that time and place, that picking a song that really reminded me of being there, or that helped me discover what I was about to embark on, had to be included in this playlist. And for me, that song was Waiting Room by Fugazi. I found it pretty quickly upon stepping onto the University of North Texas campus. And just for those of you who are not familiar, one of the residence halls there is called Bruce Hall, and a lot of the musicians were based in that. And so anytime you wanted to know what was great, what was good, what was new, what was crazy in the world of music, Bruce Hall was a great place to find that out. I think that the early 90s in Denton was a great place for anyone, but for sure for me. The town has 2 universities, as I mentioned, University of North Texas and Texas Women's is also there. North Texas had and still has one of the best jazz programs in the country. So it's a town filled with music and musicians. While there, I got exposed to everything from Django Reinhardt to Tripping Daisy and David Garza to Mudhoney and everything in between, including Fugazi, as I mentioned, and just immediately fell in love with. And so that sort of set the backdrop and set the tone for the rest of my time in Denton. I knew once I got there and I met some of the musicians and creatives in Bruce Hall, and I heard this song and I dug into this album, that I was about to enter the next magical phase of my life. And although I'd always loved music, my parents loved music. It was always on in our house. It was always on in the car. It was ever present on a road trip. This time in my life was when I felt like I really started cultivating my own sense of what I liked, and my spectrums were broadened outside of just the music that was listened to in my home or just the music that I I heard from my friends or in my high school. It felt like a whole new world had opened up to me. And so, again, I'll always be grateful for this time in my life. But I think because Fugazi is associated sort of with the post-hardcore punk scene, I don't know if they would immediately come to mind for others for a playlist centered on reflection. But hopefully that backstory gives you a little bit of info on why I felt like it was important to include them on my growing up and moving on playlist. This song is important for that. It sounds great. It captures a feeling musically and lyrically that no other song has been able to repeat for me. And again, I don't know if it was just because it happened so early on in this really formative time for me, but it really is unlike any other piece of music I've come across before. The song captures that feeling of wanting to grow up, but seeing people around you having varying degrees of success with that idea. Thinking about what you want to do and what you don't want to do, what holds you back, what motivates you, what moves you forward, feeling stuck and feeling bored. Lyrically, this song covers all of that in under 3 minutes. I think you get to go on this whole journey. And I think ultimately too, it's a positive song. It's an uplifting song. It's sort of saying, there's a great line in the song where he talks about function is the key to the waiting room. This waiting room, sort of the metaphor for getting your life going, or for, again, people that are stuck, that just can't get out of their own way. And I think from a very young age, even in my late teens, early 20s, I always remembered that, function is the key to the waiting room. And when I'm down, or whenever I just can't get out of my own way, or I'm stuck in a rut, I always try and think about that lyric, like function is the key. And it probably means something different to everybody. But to me, it's a reminder of like, you just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Like, you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to rule the world. You just have to function. Like, you just have to get up and function day after day. And sometimes that's the hardest of all, right? Sometimes just that most basic thing is hard. And so this song always comes through for me whenever I'm feeling like, I'm stuck in a rut. I don't know what to do. So definitely next time you feel stuck, give this one a try. And one final point about this track, I've mentioned it all the way through this conversation about this song, but I do love it lyrically. And I really think that, again, for some, present shit, they came up with a line that's really ringing true today. Even, again, this song has followed me since the early 90s, 1992, 1991. And I think that it's still really relevant right now. And the lyric I'm referring to is when he says, I don't want the news, I cannot use it. I don't read the news, I won't live by it. This was written in 1989. Yet in 2025, I've said it already on the show. My stated mantra is less news, more music. So I'm not suggesting I want to be uninformed or put my head in the sand, but what I'm saying is that there is such a thing as too much. News didn't used to be 24/7. It wasn't a moneymaker like it is now that relies on clickbait headlines and questionable facts to rally people around a side or a cause. My point is, for me, sometimes to move forward and get out of that rut and do my best work in this world, I need to step away from polarizing information, billing itself as news. And I just thought that it was kind of crazy that a song that was written in 1989 and was such an important song to me is now finding alignment again in a very real way with a mantra that I have set forth for 2025. So again, just another amazing story to me about how music finds you when it needs to find you and stays with you for as long as you will let it, as long as it's relevant, as long as you love it. And I think that we are going to really get into that in a major way with track 3. For this song, we are going to go backwards just a little bit. We're going to head into 1989. So again, that is the year that the Fugazi song "Waiting Room" came out. I didn't, like I said, discover it until a few years later. This song came out in 1989, and I fell in love with it immediately. And I would say that it's safe for me to declare that this song has saved me more times than any other song I can think of. The song is "Heart of the Matter" by Don Henley from the End of the Innocence album. Now, I know that this is like, it's so fun to hate on Don Henley and Eagles and all of the things that go with it. But I think if I only said one thing about this song, which of course, I won't, I'm going to say a billion things about the song. But if I could only say one thing about this song, it's this. The song says, I think it's about forgiveness. And I'm here to tell you that it is. It is. I feel like this song has helped me understand everything from, my parents' divorce, even though it came out 8 years after they divorced. It helped me say I'm sorry to a boy I loved but couldn't be with. It's been with me as I cried over lost friendships and hurt feelings. It reminds me that two whole people have to come to a relationship. And if one person is coming with 50%, even if one person is coming with 90%, it just won't work long term. And I'm so grateful that this song has been with me for so long because it's just always there when I need it. And again, as I mentioned in the opener to this track, there is so much Eagles lore in the music world, and a lot of it centers on what a perfectionist and you know arrogant asshole, for lack of a more eloquent phrase, Don Henley is. But I'll always love him for the gift of this song. I mean, he and Glenn Frey, because as most of you know, I am and will always remain a huge Eagles fan. But this song stands above almost the entire Eagles catalog, Don Henley's solo, Glenn Frey's solo, like anything, any member of the band that went on to have a great solo career. This song sort of rises above all of them for me. And I also think of this song as being a first love song that captures the essence of a relationship ending. And I do consider it a love song, even though I think at its heart, it's about a breakup. It's a love song about self love and having the courage to walk away when something ends badly. And then, like, to take it a step further, having the humility to learn from the hard lessons. And then, of course, ultimately to forgive yourself and others, because at the end of the day, everybody is growing, right? At different paces, at different depths. We're all trying to learn. And I think that the best thing we can do is just grant that forgiveness to ourselves and to others, because it really does allow you to just close the door on one thing and open it to something else. Hard lesson. But again, I feel like this song always finds me when I need to hear that main message. And for me, again, it is, you better put it all behind you, baby, because life goes on. You keep carrying that anger, it'll eat you up inside. So thank you, Don Henley, Mike Campbell, and JD Souther for writing this song. This one means a lot to me. And I think that just that message of forgiveness and putting anger down are so important. They're lessons that I remember on the daily. As a person who has a lot of big feelings, I'm very passionate, I'm very opinionated. I think it's easy to get caught up in that fire, and this song is always a reminder that, like, it's okay to have that. It's okay. That fire is what keeps me going. It's what burns inside of me, and it can also eat a person up, eat me up if it goes unchecked. The forgiveness piece, the putting anger down has to be a part of it. It can't just be passion all the time. You've got to have the balance. And like I said, whether I'm in the grocery store or my car or somebody else's car, it's been amazing to me throughout my life how this song finds me when I need to hear that message the most. So if you haven't listened to it in a while, or you think you hate Don Henley because of the Eagles, definitely just put that down for a second and give this song a real listen, and see if it turns you around. Well, it's finally time to bring it all home. So I'm going to close with a newish song that I think sums up all of these feelings of growing up and moving on perfectly. Final track this week is 17 Going Under by Sam Fender from the 2021 album of the same name. So, Sam Fender is an artist that I have been loving lately. To me, he's kind of like a modern day Bruce Springsteen. He knows how to deliver an anthem while still coming across as really vulnerable. It's like you're reading his diary, or he's reading his diary to you, but with a stadium full of people. Do you know what I mean? He can fill a really big space, yet he's giving you this really intimate story. And I love that. I think that's got to be such a hard thing to do from a writing perspective, from a performance perspective. And so I really do love what Sam Fender is bringing. He's kind of Bruce Springsteen. He's kind of Brandon Flowers. Like there are a lot of influences that you can hear, or at least that I pick up, but I feel like he's still completely unique and sounds really now. He sounds really of this time to me. I also love that the song feels like it touches on familial love too. I've spent a lot of time talking about, first loves and heartbreak and sort of taking responsibility for that in romantic relationships and friendships, forgiving yourself when things go badly, forgiving others when they hurt you. Yet this song feels like, again, it touches on families. That's the first place that we experience love and sometimes heartbreak. And so I would feel remiss if I didn't include those themes in a growing up and moving on playlist. And I feel like this lyric says it so well. He says, an embryonic love the first time that it's scarred. So again, that feels like it speaks to kind of that familial love to me. And then it says, embarrass yourself for someone crying like a child. And this is, I think, about the first time that you realize outside love, I'm sort of air quoting outside love, isn't as safe as familial love. Now, again, everybody's got a different lived experience. So this is just me speaking for me. But I think even whenever we experience heartbreak or pain at home, ultimately, hopefully for most of us, home is still a really safe place. And then you go out into the world and you open up your heart in the same way, because it's really not a choice, right? Whenever you're born into a family, you sort of just love those people, or you're told that that's what you're supposed to do. And then you get out into the world and you choose to open up your heart and you realize it just isn't nearly as safe as being at home. And again, I'm speaking from like a very idealistic place about home life and love and the kinds of relationships that we have there. But I just think that this lyric, going from an embryonic love the first time that it's scarred into embarrass yourself for someone crying like a child, really, it just hits hard. It's a 1-2 punch for me that captures that feeling. I think when I think back to that very first time that I embarrassed myself for someone, or that I was left crying like a child because of that pain, I still almost feel the gut punch of it all. I can close my eyes and go back there, and just it almost takes my breath away all these years later. And then the amazing part about it, like to have spent 2 minutes saying all of that, and then to say, yet we continue to open our hearts to people because it's such a huge part of the human experience. Like, at least it is for me. So no matter how painful a situation is or was, I continue to go back out and do it again and again. It's just sort of one of those things I think about being human that is mind-boggling a little bit. It really is baffling that we put ourselves in a position to be hurt, but I think that the reward is always worth the risk, again, at least for me. And I'm not talking about dangerous situations, but I mean just the vulnerability of putting yourself out there in the world where there's an opportunity that somebody could take your love and then not treat it with the kind of care that it deserves. But we keep going back. We keep going back for more. I also love, just to sort of follow on what Don Henley was saying in Heart of the Matter. There's a line in 17 Going Under that says, "That's the thing with anger. It begs to stick around." And I think, Don Henley spends a lot of time in Heart of the Matter talking about forgiveness and how heavy anger can be. This song sort of reinforces that and reminds me that I can let anger go anytime. I feel like the Don Henley song is a reminder of like, if you keep carrying that anger, it'll eat you up inside. And this song is a reminder of like, you know what? Yes, that anger is there, but you can let it go, right? Even but probably especially when it begs to stick around, right? That's all the more reason to let it go, or all the more signifier for me that I need to let it go if it's begging me to stick around. So I feel like these are kind of like two sides of the same coin, if that makes sense. These being, the Don Henley song going right into 17 Going Under. I guess one of the final things I'll say about this track is that I also like that this feels like a slice of life story, right? It's not my life. It's a male story. It's a British story. It's a story told by a person much younger than I am who has a totally different lived experience. Yet I feel like I understand him completely and relate entirely. That I love, that I am grateful for. That is why, music is my safe haven, my library, my poetry. I think it's for that very reason. Just being able to understand and relate to somebody that is so different from me. It just, again, makes me so eternally grateful and blows my mind every time I think about it. But if you've not gotten into Sam Fender, definitely check him out. He has some EPs. He has 2 albums. Hypersonic Missiles from 2019. On that album, I love "Will We Talk" and "You're Not the Only One." Then this album, 17 Going Under, is from 2021. Obviously, this song is the title track from that. The entire album is great, but in addition to this song, I also love "Spit of You." That's a song about he and his dad. So definitely encourage you to check out Sam Fender if you've not. And his new album, People Watching Streets, on February 21st. So in a couple weeks, that'll be coming out. And if the singles that have been released are any indication, it's going to be another great album from him. So with that, I think that is it for my growing up and moving on time capsule. I hope this episode and playlist allows you some time to think about how far you've come and how hard it can be, and how it's also ultimately all worth it. That wraps this episode, but be sure to follow, download, and share this show. And if you love listening, please share with a friend that you think might enjoy listening to. And last but not least, to stay informed on all things Super Awesome Mix and What Are You Listening To, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Super Awesome Mix. Thanks again for listening, and please join me again next week to find your new favorite song.